Good morning. This is the Innovation Conversation. How you doing, Tom?
Doing all right, Kevin. Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been a while. You were in Francais last time that we talked.
I was. It was a quick trip there. But yeah, it's probably been a month
Yeah.
since we connected. So good to be back and good to be reunited.
Yes, absolutely. Even if there's 3,000 miles between us, right?
Hey, our hearts are always close.
Yes, and bonding over the Mets, which is sometimes painful.
Yeah.
Um, so one of those we want to talk about today is there's been a couple of stories that I've picked up on recently about Amazon's what they're calling their Starfish project, which apparently has been around and they've been working on it since 2023, so it's not brand new,
hmm
but seems to be getting some traction now and becoming something that is going to probably have uh, some pretty significant competitive implications for Amazon and its competitors. So explain a little bit what Starfish is.
So from what I have read, and I don't think Amazon has necessarily commented directly publicly on this. I'm not sure. But the stories that we see
Right.
is that they have an AI engine that's going to be, scraping a couple 100,000 sites, kind of throughout the world to enable Amazon to create the ultimate authoritative, source of product information.
Right.
So being able to kind of gather it from all these sources, use the AI engine to organize the content, and to present the content, to customers. Implications, for Amazon, are things like, Amazon knows that better content uh, converts at a higher rate. So having better, more accurate, more robust content, and this is text, images, video, reviews, the full gambit of content, but that converts better. Um, that enables them to lower the cost for sellers on Amazon to do work with Amazon because the AI can help support a lot of, the compilation and composition of those detail pages, which can be a lot of work and
Mhm.
can also be a lot of work to keep up with. And this AI should be able to keep them, largely updated. They won't be perfect
Right.
by any stretch. There still have to be probably some humans in the loop there, and certainly some AI. Some AI mechanisms to keep it updated and accurate. But it can enable Amazon to offer even a longer tail of products because, the incremental cost of adding those SKUs when you don't have to put together, you know, the um, the product information on those, can lower the cost of doing that. So it can increase the scale and, effectiveness of the marketplace. It can ultimately help their service. We've heard that they have a service where, they want to help you buy things even if it's not on Amazon, right? That they'll use agentic AI that you'll be able to find a product via Amazon, and then Amazon could mechanically, go out and acquire that for you from the source of that product. So, just lots of strategic and competitive, opportunities for Amazon with this service. And of course, this could become an AWS based service that's available to third parties, something that they can further monetize. So it fits their business model in a number of really compelling ways.
So, okay, I mean, bunch of questions. When I first looked at this, my first reaction was it reminded me a little bit about what a company called Gladson was doing, I don't know, 30 years ago, right? But that was all product images. This is like Gladson on steroids. I mean, in some ways, right? Because you're providing an awful lot of content.
Yeah, so we used to way back in the day. It's gonna
Yeah, which is
date
going to
us, I
date both of
suppose.
us,
But
right?
so Gladson did a whole bunch of things, but that was one of the services they did was they captured a catalog of product images. Then they added, other basic product attributes that they would include, and then they would, syndicate that information out to retailers that wanted to use it. And Quickie is another great, example of a company that did that. And then there was the company, gosh, probably 10 to 15 years ago now. It might not be quite that long, called Syndigo, that basically rolled up these content, syndication partners into just broader offering, and a lot more robust content, more capabilities, way more automated. You plug into them, and then they syndicate the content out to you. You pay a subscription for that. Manufacturers could use it to, they would put their content in, and then Syndigo would manage it, and then others could pull that content out. And there's other players out there, in and around that space. Salsify is another great example of companies that help kind of capture product information and syndicate it out. Spins, there's just a number of those companies that do that
So,
out there. This is a direct competitor to that.
and so, but when we talk about content, are we talking about just comprehensive everything you want to know about that product and and we're afraid to ask ingredients, country of origin. I mean, all that information, or does it, or is the intent, at least as far as we know, to take all that and then use AI to massage it down to what basically becomes marketing information to help Amazon and its third party sellers make the sale to the consumer?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's a combination thereof. You want as comprehensive product data as you can have,
Hmm.
right? So that includes everything, the full gambit of, details on the product, use cases for the product, country of origin, ingredients, potentially some other scoring and things around that. Um, Customer reviews, images, videos, all of that stuff. And, so think of like going to a product detail page and scrolling down and having that scrolling never stop, right? That,
Right,
there could be elements of a product's information that are important to you as an individual
right.
customer that should be able to be matched with your intention or your interest in that. So it's really important to go deep. I do think there'll be some AI around organizing that information, right? Because different ways to organize it can make the content more responsive,
Hmm.
so that's key. It could even ultimately become personalized, right? If a site, aka Amazon, gets to know you, they could prioritize content based on what's historically important to you,
Right.
right? And what you've responded to in the past, right? So that can all be handled in there. And then, yes, as far as the marketing standpoint goes, you can also match up the content with the automated marketing, right? To have the marketing, be marketing to this automated content, and have this automated content dynamically modifying, not changing you don't want to change the accuracy of it or change the integrity of it, but modifying it such that it better matches, to the marketing signal, and then that can help their ad business.
So there are also, I mean, there are implications here in all sorts of ways. I mean, it seems to me that um, it should allow, ideally, if you have all this information, and because it's being scraped, that means it's not just from all these hundreds of thousands of or sites. It's not just the information that the seller wants you to have. It's actually all the information, right? Because it is not limited. It is not being edited in that sense, which should allow, first of all, a consumer. I mean, if all this stuff is out there, for me to be able to say, I only want to see made in America products or something like that, right? I mean, it should allow whether it's instinctive based on historical behavior or it allows me to start to filter that way. And I don't think that filter exists on Amazon today, which I really don't understand. You'd think that would be an easy
Right.
filter to put on. Um, it should allow that, but it also should allow, for example, if you're concerned, well, Amazon has sort of backed off the idea that they might say, hey, this product costs this much more because of tariffs. They don't want to identify it that way. It should allow me as a consumer to say, hey, listen, the country of origin is there. It's Brazil. There's a 50% tariff on all products coming from Brazil. Therefore, I can work on the assumption that that entire 50% is not being eaten by either Amazon and or the supplier. I'm paying more because of that, right? It should allow for greater analysis by the consumer because all this information that's being fed into the system is ideally going to be available to me as a shopper on Amazon. And it also should allow, it seems to me, in some way to, in certain cases, to facilitate or empower um, the whole recall process, right? Because they're going to have all this information. It's at some level, it should make the recall process at least a little bit more seamless, if you will. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think, just kind of going back to like the country of origin information, I mean, that is certainly, it seems like particularly if AI is generating it, it would be, relatively natural to include that, right? And then based on importance, how customers are responding to that, searching for that, responding to that, converting that, I think it can then become performant,
Right.
based on that. So I think that's certainly to customers that care about that's important to. I think that'll be valuable to them, and that should be something that they're able to leverage. Um, as far as the tariff thing goes, I mean, that could also help a customer, I guess, understand like, okay, there's likely some kind of tariff cost, in this product from Brazil, and then maybe there's an alternative product available from a country that doesn't have, such a tariff burden. But ultimately for the customer, it's still going to come down to price, right? So
Right.
if the Brazil one is the same price and maybe I think it's a better source, then I'm
Or
going to
you
go
could
with Brazil.
Right. I mean, you can make your own price value judgment, right?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, Brazilian coffee may cost more than Colombia coffee, but I prefer Brazilian coffee, and therefore that's what I'm going to choose. But
Yeah.
it empowers me as a consumer to make those decisions
Yeah.
better.
Usually on Amazon, that should result in a different product though, right? Like this, because you're not going to necessarily get the exact, I mean, if you're getting the exact same product, well, I guess you could. Like if there's the exact same product that could be US sourced versus Brazil sourced versus China sourced.
Right.
Um, today you go to that product and then a seller would win the buy box.
Right.
If you buy that from that seller or you choose another seller. So I guess in this case, you could choose to change sellers based on where
Yeah.
the product originated to the extent that that's important to you, as a factor in the value. So yeah, so I guess I could see that. And then, as far as recalls go, I mean, I guess if a product, is subject to a recall, all retailers have their own, there's obviously infrastructure, to get those recalls out there, and retailers have their own processes and procedures for pulling it off shelves and getting word out to customers, and whatnot. A lot of that tends to be transactional and or where stuff is sitting in inventory, but to the extent that you could inform a customer that a product has a recall history, or there was a recall during a certain period of time, or hey, a recall just came out, and you know, there may be, I don't know, there may be risk of inventory, being recalled, potentially. I'm not sure where the recall would sit in the product data though, because the product data is basically, hey, here's the profile of the item, here's the current attributes and characteristics of the item. Here are the images. Here are the use cases, the videos, those kinds of things.
So you said earlier that Amazon could license this, if license is the right word, this the Starfish platform to other retailers. Well, why would they want to do that? I mean, it seems to me at some level this gives. I mean, they're not the only company that's in the marketplace business. This gives them a competitive advantage. I mean, I would imagine, unless Walmart has also developing something like this down in Bentonville, which they could be, you know, um, this would give in that the pitch battle between
Mhm.
these two behemoths, right? This would give Amazon, a pretty significant competitive edge, at least in this part of the competition.
Well, it's the age-old Amazon cloud
Right.
story, right? Amazon develops a capability internally, they refine it, they put it into production, they use it to their competitive advantage, they gain scale advantage using that capability over competition. They become better and better and better at using that. They're also starting the next innovation cycle on something else, right? And then they move that over to the cloud to enable that to be further leveraged and further monetized beyond their own walls.
So they're
So it's
essentially
very typical to compute capacity, to any other AWS, service, and even now they're doing it with their ad capabilities.
so they're essentially license. They're I just saw F1, so this is why I'm using this as a metaphor, right? They're allowing other cars to get on the track, but they're already 5 laps ahead of everybody else.
Exactly.
Okay, so
And then there's even more value created by the network,
right,
right? So now if lots of retail market share, now Amazon's market share is no slouch. So alone, they do have a bunch of scale.
right,
But if a bunch more scale across a bunch more channels is created by others using this, well, then it's going to be worthwhile for me as, say, Nestle, to make sure that my product information is super updated and accurate on my externally facing sites
sure.
because that's where Amazon's going to come gather this information from. In the past, I would have had to publish to a syndicator. Then, I would pay for that, and then the syndicator would then in turn resell that. And so you ultimately can bypass, a fair amount of the existing infrastructure and pipelines that are in place. That's good and bad, right? Because the existing pipelines are they're enterprise scale, they're proven, they have high integrity. Although integrity is something you're always chasing because, I mean, you can have integrity, but the integrity of the data is something you're always chasing because things break all the time. An attribute may change, an ingredient may change,
Well, to
and
be
fighting to
clear,
keep up with that is challenging.
this is all AI empowered, AI fueled. AI gets it wrong. I mean, that's one. I mean, it's funny. I've been playing around a lot lately with ChatGPT
Mhm.
and stuff like that, and it's interesting when the degree to which AI gets it wrong. I mean, or is dated or
And
something.
yet it's so confident it's right.
Yeah, yes, utterly,
It
yeah,
comes off as
utterly
so confident that it's
more
right.
confident that it's right than I'm usually confident that I'm right, which is
Yeah.
saying something. But the thing is that, but so that's interesting. But of course, that's going to get better too. I mean,
It's
that's
going to get better, and it can, yeah. But I mean, there will be risks of that, hallucinating, for lack of a better term.
right.
But you'll build in controls. You'll allow humans in the loop. Humans can also be customers to say, hey, there's a problem with this here, and there will be ways for customers to be able to interact with the content to say this is wrong, and they should be able to, you know, in time, continue to ensure that's right. But then there'll also probably be malicious attacks on that content to try to say no, that to try to disrupt it, right? So security is right. So there's lots of implications here, but also lots of potential.
Well, and not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but on this, but you know, I would think it would then be incumbent, especially because AI is so intrinsic to this, for Amazon to be more responsive to people's corrections and collaborate and
Yeah,
corrections, right, than say Google or Wikipedia are, right? Because sometimes,
yeah,
I was just reading a very funny column the other day by Dave Barry about how, Google had him being dead and how it was and he said, I'm writing to them saying I'm not. And getting them to change the Google, it was like it took forever and a day. And so Amazon, and frankly, not just Amazon, they're all going to have to be more responsive to the idea that if people correct them, they need to pay attention to those
Es-
corrections.
especially if it's a valid correction,
Right.
because you could also be nefarious and
Totally.
send out bad corrections as a
Right.
competitor.
Right. Absolutely.
That'd be terrible, but I wouldn't put it past everyone,
Oh,
you know. Or I shouldn't. I wouldn't put it. Yeah, Yeah. There
And
are people that would do it.
there are always going to be bad actors.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Last question. Is this based on what you've read about it? And we don't know that much, right? But is this the kind of thing that is likely to, when it really goes public, it's likely to have an enormous impact like that? Or is it more likely to have sort of a creeping impact that's going to take place in a way that it's going to be slow and steady, and then all of a sudden it's going to be huge and we're going to go, whoa, how did that happen? Which is more likely?
Good question. I guess it really depends how quickly Amazon can scale it through the whole catalog and then expand the catalog based on it. Right. So they've been doing this since 23, so call it a couple years in. They've been testing it at some level of scale. Nobody knows what level of scale that is, but it's driving improved results. You saw a number out there, again, reported secondhand that this could be a $7.5 billion pop in sales for them.
This year.
But I don't think it's
And what that's this year. I mean, they're saying
this year.
2025 it
Right.
could raise their sales by 7.5 billion.
Right. So is that as if it's on all SKUs or is that on based on the planned, rollout schedule? So yeah, I mean my guess is, it'll be an accelerant. Um, we would always see, when I was at Amazon and then in our agency business, like when you changed a detail page, when you improved the content of a detail page, you you could see change in conversion pretty quickly.
Really?
So once customers are at the page, that change in conversion happened very quickly. And then given that item became more responsive to search,
Yeah.
and then ultimately to the ad engine and whatnot. So then that item would climb, 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 and then it would just take off. So, it was it happened slowly and then fast. Um,
It's
you
like
know,
Ernest Hemingway said about bankruptcy.
exactly, exactly. Yes. Uh, So yeah, I think it could be pretty big. Yeah, I mean, and for Amazon to move the needle, they got to do some pretty transformative stuff. And I think this could potentially be a big one.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's going to come down to execution, though. Like you've got to make the customer experience really good. You can't have it, you know, have it make the ad engine go crazy and diminish the customer experience through that. But gosh, if you're able to do it right, what it could do for sales, what it could do for customer experience first, then sales, then ultimately advertising, it could be pretty big. And then down the road as an AWS service, syndicatable out to others, could be pretty legit. There'll be other competition, but
Well,
Amazon's in a good
so,
place.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think either of us would be surprised if Walmart were working on the same sort of thing. And Google does do this sort of thing. They're
And
just
Google
not
does do it already. And the
right.
syndicators will likely evolve their business models to do more of this.
Right.
I would guess. I don't know, but I would guess.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it. Tom,
Yeah.
as always, great to see you. Thanks for your time, and we'll catch up again in a few weeks.
I look forward to it, and let's not let the next one be so long as this one was.
Sounds good. Take care.
Thanks,
See ya.
everyone.